if you're a marijuana grower, you don't want hemp next to you because it's going to stop. And if you're a hemp grower, you're not concerned with marijuana because it's not going to raise your THC levels.
Well, my concern was if it was legal to grow hemp and the neighbor came in on the back 40 and started cultivating a little corner of it, could I tell his...
That was marijuana?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the stupid move. That would be a dumb, because no one's going to buy that marijuana because it's... That's not my industry, but no one's going to buy that because it's crap, right? Well, you're not going to get stoned off it. It's going to give you a headache. If you smoked our entire 300 acres, your lungs would give out way before you felt stoned. Like, you would, it's not possible.
He was saying if they planted some good stuff in the corner of your other stuff, would it survive? But it would cross-pollinate.
It would survive, but the amount of psychoactivity in that plant would be minimal.
It would ruin it for what they wanted.
It would absolutely ruin it for what they wanted.
Got it.
That's a better way to put it.
Doesn't the hemp actually grow a lot faster and a lot taller, so it would block out the sun?
Correct.
And so it probably wouldn't even grow the marijuana.
It would probably grow side by side, but that wouldn't be done. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. What you're growing the marijuana for would be negated as soon as it got hit with the pollen.
We always had a joke in Kentucky that the only people that were against hemp was the state police and the pot growers. Because state police are going to lose funding, and of course people that grew were going to lose their money. So those were the only two people against it in Kentucky, really.
And that might be some truth to that.
And it was.
So can you do the same thing basically with both plants, though?
As far as the downline products?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
okay.
More or less.
I did double check, and American Farm Bureau 2 years ago actually took your position to decriminalize or to legalize hemp nationwide.
Yeah.
So
Iowa Farm Bureau is not there yet. We've been working on them, but American Farm Bureau is there. Yeah.
It doesn't matter as long as the national policy.
Really?
The national policy supersedes state policy on Farm Bureau.
I did not know that.
When we go to D.C., we represent national policy, not state.
Really? I did not know
Indeed.
that. Okay.
Cool, and they're on board.
And they are.
That's awesome. That's
2 years
really
ago,
good to hear.
January, they developed that policy. So
Okay, that's really good to hear. Again, it's if it becomes legal, everyone and their mom's not going to be planting hemp, but it's good to have another option, right? As a farmer, I want another option, right? I want to be able to do something different. Particularly, I just want to use that as a rotational crop. I want something that leaves my soil better off than it was before, which will help me for whatever I want to concentrate on, right, from a growing standpoint. So that's great to hear. That's good news. I learned something new today. Any other questions, guys?
Well, for the longest time, obviously Iowa and corn, and then they start baling their corn stalks, so that takes, if you don't let that corn lay there after taking the corn off the stalk, you don't let the stalks go back into the soil, well, that takes away from the soil, right? So
The stalks lying and dying in the soil?
yeah, and if they were to, so let's say we take every bit of part of this plant and use it, so there wouldn't be no stock left. See, there wouldn't be nothing going back into the soil.
you're worried about the organic
The
matter.
roots. The
You
roots
see,
that-
stay in.
thank you.
Yes.
In Kentucky, we let the leaves fall
That's exactly right.
I mean,
So the
somewhere
fan
in there
leaves,
you
the
have
leaves
to
that
leave
come out.
something in the soil.
So when you go through and harvest it, right? Some of that plant matter falls, and then that falls, and as that decomposes, it leaves the nutrients from. Again, those nutrients, those fan leaves are very nutritious, right? To humans and to soil and to animals, right? So it leaves that nutrition on top of the soil, and then when you till it in, it puts. And then again, the roots break the soil up too, so it allows. I mean, it aerates your soil for you, right?
So wait, also, we're looking at the flower, the inside of the stalk,
Okay.
and what else? I mean, are those
The entire plant can get used from the roots all the way to the seeds. I mean,
and the seeds? Okay,
It's like a hog, everything but the squeal.
so the flower, yeah, right.
Pretty much. I mean, they call it the green buffalo because the Native Americans would use essentially all of the buffalo, right? Like,
Right.
so they call it because you can use all of the
So,
plants.
it's with that said, you use all of it, so what gets left to go back into the soil?
We don't use the roots. We don't pull it up. We leave the roots under there. We essentially cut it, and then we leave the root system in there. The leaves obviously have hit the ground and done and put. But even as it's growing, right, leaves fall off, and then the canopy
Right.
so much the weeds don't come up and put all that crap in your soil.
Right.
And then as they decompose, right, it leaves it better off.
Of course, if it
More
takes-
nutrients.
If it takes less moisture, the cover crop would work pretty good with it too. I mean,
Yep.
you could take it off and sow the cover crop and
but it
then
also
kill that
doesn't
in the
take
spring.
up as much as corn or other crops.
I was going to say, what is the
It-
nutritional
it's-
requirements of?
It's very little. In Kentucky, our group, we actually grew it on a reclaimed mine site, and they spread a little bit of manure just so it had, I guess, something to grow in because it was just rock and rubble. And it grew fine, and they're planning on growing it next year and the year after because, I mean, there was nothing there.
Will it grow in Kansas?
Yeah.
I think so. I mean,
it
a big-
grows
They
anywhere.
call it Nebraska
Grow in Kansas,
ditchweed.
you
Nebraska's
grow
been
it
trying to get rid of it
anywhere.
forever, right? It's just let's line in the ditchweed here too. Yeah.
What would it do with radiation crap?
So like Chernobyl, right after Chernobyl, that
Well, I was
was
thinking of Durango.
yeah Durango. So we want to use. So there was, I don't know if you guys heard, but there was a mine that filled with water and then the way it all and then so
Durango, Colorado.
yeah. So using it makes sense, right? We're trying to get at the state level now. We tried the federal level last year. They didn't want to work with us to allow us to plant hemp on that buffer around those rivers, and really then the hemp would. The theory is the hemp would bioaccumulate all of those toxins, right? Those heavy metals, suck it into the plant, and then the plant itself would have the soil would be better off, but the plant would have it. So then, what do you do with that plant? Right, I think that was the main question we're still trying to figure out because that plant that now has those heavy metals, how do you process that? I don't know if we have an answer to that yet, but I know that we have an answer to how to get that stuff out of the soil, and that's hemp. Yeah, so there's definitely something you can do with it, right? Because they're doing something with it in Chernobyl, right? So they're not making radioactive clothes and you know what I mean, or radioactive CBD for these kids, right? They're doing something with it. We haven't got that far yet, but I know it can. We know it can pull it out of the soil.
Like I got two. So like people that don't even have land, how can they make money off this stuff? They like selling the seed.
People don't have what?
If they don't have land, like they're not able to farm.
Okay.
But like you're gonna need a co-op, right? Or can we take it to a co-op that's in town?
No, the idea would be we'd be developing co-ops here in Iowa.
So
we
for
process
strictly
it.
just for the hemp.
Yep.
So then when it would go to a lot of jobs and everything else.
Absolutely.
So we're a year-old company, and we've hired about 25 people, right? Between more or less full-time, between all the different things we do, right? And we're not a big. I mean, 300 acres is not that much land. It's a lot in the hemp's world, right? But it's not a lot in reality of agriculture, right? We have 46,000 acres we can plant in Colorado. We did 300, right? We didn't even do 1%. So
Depends on whether you're harvesting by hand or by machine.
right. That too. A lot of factors, right? But yeah. So there are co-ops forming in Colorado right now that do just that. We have like an affiliate. We're not doing a co-op necessarily. We're doing kind of an affiliate program where we do a seed and a consulting basis for Colorado farmers. Is how we're approaching it. I know.
How big of a co-op do you need for only 300 acres?
No, 300 acres was just ours. This last year was just us.
There's other people than just you that done it.
Right.
There in Colorado.
Correct.
Doing this hemp.
Correct. So some of them are doing, like there's an organic co-op. I know a good friend of mine's doing an organic co-op. He's going to do about 1,500 acres this year with his co-op. Other people are just growing. Some companies are just growing. One company registered 1,000 acres on their own. The way we're approaching it, the model we're working under, probably is the better way to say it, is not necessarily a legal co-op, but more of an affiliate program where we provide seed and help you farm and consulting, and then we would buy back that harvest and then sell it downstream. We have the distribution already. We would just plug in that crop, your crop is farmer B, C, D, F, into our group. But it's not a legal co-op. We're not approaching it as a legal co-op for our needs in Colorado. But co-ops are in Colorado, and co-ops here could do exactly what they're doing now. They would just have hemp as an option.
The beauty of a biorefinery for hemp is that you could create a raw material for ethanol, cellulosic ethanol, but you could create it in a co-op environment. So the two plants we have right now, DuPont and Emmitsburg, $300 million facilities. I don't know anybody here that's a part of that facility. Exactly. These are maybe $20, $30 million biorefinery facilities. So that would the ideal model for that is a co-op. Absolutely. You need the farmers invested in it. You want them invested in the profit of it. And really this is a way to take that big ag out of the picture a little bit and bring in smaller processing facilities for local communities.
But if we already have like big ones like General Mills,
That's very true. I'm sure they could be converted, but I don't know how much they're going to want to be mixing their corn and soy with the hemp. I just know that for right now, I've talked to a few extraction companies in Iowa, and they said that just because they have contracts with the federal government and they have contracts with other companies, they're only going to be extracting certain plants and they won't touch hemp, even if it was legal. That's
So
what
you guys
they
get
said.
your own place.
Yeah,
It's pretty
pretty much.
Eventually, that won't be the case, right? That's just the case now because of the classification.
Well, no, that'd be better. I mean, I'd open more.
I think that would be better.
I think
They still got their own people doing their thing.
I'm with you 100% because that allows people that aren't big ag to make real money again, to actually be able to have an option that's beneficial, right, to their families and their children, right? So, I agree with you.
Well, hemp, as far as I know, isn't on the Chicago Commodities Exchange, right?
No.
So how is market price set?
That's a great question. So it's not stabilized yet, right? So I mean, I've literally seen seeds go from $14 a seed to $1,000 a pound to $10 a pound. So it's not stabilized. Eventually, if it becomes legal, it will be on the Chicago board. But there are hemp exchanges now that are being developed online mainly to help try to stabilize the price, or at least connect buyers and sellers. But you're absolutely right. There's no, we know today exactly what corn's selling for today. That's not the case for hemp domestically.
The entire infrastructure is being developed.
Yeah.
Right.
And the beauty, I think there's sort of a downside of being sort of the federal classification in that it's so difficult. You can't get banking. You can't get federal permits. You can't get anything, right? So it's very difficult. But from the other side, for entrepreneurs, for small business people, for small farmers, it gives us an opportunity to get into this before big ag takes over. So when they do come in, who's going to be the experts? They're going to be the farmers that have been growing it for the last few years before it was federally legal. And those are the people that are going to really reap those rewards. So this is an opportunity for people to get in before these big boys get in and take over and actually develop something novel, and it will happen.
It's gonna happen.
Well, but the reality is they have to change their model.
Yeah, that's very
Because what they're doing now, right, with corn, and what their model does not work for hemp, right? Because of the inherent properties of you're not taking it and shipping it all to one area. You have to have local, regional processing. Like you have that unless transportation costs become zero, right? You have to have something local. So they have to change their model, which is good for us because we can create our own in the meantime. At least that's how we're looking at it in Colorado, and that's what we're doing in Colorado.
You guys raised some good money up there.
Yeah.
You know?
Eventually, now that we can cross state lines, it's a lot. The market went from 8 million in Colorado to now nationwide and actually worldwide. But yeah, it's definitely a bit. Again, all the money we're making, we're putting back into the company for infrastructure and that sort of stuff. But we'll get there eventually as a nation, and I think. Especially with your guys' help, if you can call your senators in Grassley in specific and say, hey, buddy, what are you doing? Let's get this thing going, right?
Do you have anything on the internet yet to print out or to get the word out?
Yeah, so we have hemproadtrip.com is up. We have our whole suite of social media. But Hemp Road Trip is the best place to start. We have a lot of information there. We have links to other information. You can sign up for our newsletter there and get some additional information. We can put you in touch with your specific representatives. We have a software that allows you to come out and sign and call them, even from your phone. So, yeah, we have that online presence,
Also,
if you will.
If you want to come to us at iowahemp.org, we're doing a local lobbying here. I mean, not local education, and then Heartland is actually handling lobbying here in Iowa as well. So if you are interested, you can come online, iowahemp.org, or you can come see me afterwards, get my information. If you want me to send you a letter to send to Grassley, get my card. Give me a call, give me your email address, give me your phone number. I'll send you a letter if you want to send something to Grassley. No problem.
Do we have
Tell
anything
Rick
in
your
the State
name.
House now?
We
Locally?
We will.
Iowa?
There is one there from last year, the HF 470 that we introduced, but we are working on a much more comprehensive bill that's has some additions and some enhancements over what we submitted last year. Last year was our first go at it, and so we learned a lot, and now we're going back with a professional team of lobbyists that are handling this. So they've written a legislation based on Colorado, Kentucky, some of the other states that have passed hemp legislation. So it's very comprehensive. We made one change. We've included heirloom seed. So a big problem in the hemp industry is that we have to import, even in Kentucky, what they've done there is that the Department of Agriculture has gotten a Schedule I import license, and then they extend that license to anybody that's participating in the pilot programs with them. So they have to import seed from Europe and from Canada, simply because they didn't work in an heirloom seed part of their bill. In Colorado, you guys used heirloom seed. Here we want to do the same thing. We want to use our Iowana or our ditchweed, and we want to create genetics from that rather than having to depend on overseas suppliers.
Any way of getting Bill Stowe on board so that he can make that part of his little soapbox?
The lobbyists are looking into all angles involving the waterworks and that pending litigation.
Yes.
I mean, it seems like this would be the way to clean up his
It
problem.
really is, and we're making a little bit of headway there up at the State House in terms of just water quality issues. But there's a lot of big names in Iowa that have a stake in that fight. So the lobbyists and the people we've got up there are handling that and pushing that side too, because they're asking us to choose between children and farmers. And we don't have to do that. We can make money and solve the problem at the same time.
I don't know if you guys heard this, the Des Moines Register wrote an article about this. They want to divert a portion of the education taxes, the taxes we collect for the education fund, to clean up our water.
Yeah.
And that's robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
We can honestly do this, make money for farmers, and save the education fund at the same time, all with one piece of legislation, and a fight a remediation program along with it. To me, it's pretty much clear cut in that sense.
I think it's important to know too, Grassley's up for re-election in November and he has 3 opponents right now. So if this is a priority to you, you might also speak with some of the people that are running against Grassley this fall and find out what their position is.
I know Robert Reese is incredibly supportive of him. Robert Reese is running against Grassley. He's a
Rob Hogue is running against Grassley. Tom
The
Kraus
economic
is
guy?
running against Grassley.
No, he was a former talk radio show host.
Tom Fegan, Bob Kraus, and Rob Hogue are all 3 running against Grassley.
Yep.
So those are conversations to have as well.
All Democrats?
Those 3 are all Dems. Yep.
Robert Reese is going after him in the primary, so he's a Republican. And is everybody ready for Winnie to give her presentation? Well, actually, Winnie, if you could introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about Kentucky hemp farming, because it's different from Colorado, obviously.
My name is Winnie Chevron. I've been working with Freedom Seed and Feed, and we are based in Kentucky.
With who? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Freedom Seed and Feed. We also do a lot with Growing Warriors, which is helping veterans get back on their feet and kind of reestablish back into society. We do a lot with wounded warriors that have come back with PTSD and other things like that, and just kind of help them get back into farming, or some that's never been farming before. So it's really great. I've never worked with veterans before, and it was a really good opportunity for me to learn what they've been through and to help people that serve this country to protect the freedoms that we have to grow whatever is legal. And unfortunately, hemp is not legal in all 50 states, so that's something that we're trying to get through. And this is hemp. This is our shortest crop because I was going to take a smaller car, and usually it can get up to anywhere from this height to 10, 12 feet. So, yeah, this is it.
It looks like wheat.
I mean, I don't know what it looks like. But in Kentucky, we do things a lot differently because our climate is different. And who asked about the water before, if water affected it? Well, we had a very wet year. I didn't get this part. But, does anyone have a knife? I'm sorry. Hemp is very strong, by the way. It's very hard to get apart. That's why they make it out of rope. And if you do not tie it correctly...
Watch your hand.
Thank you so much. So last year we had a really wet year, and we didn't get to plant some on time due to the fact of the rain, because we couldn't get tractors out there or anything else like that. So that's where this came in, because we planted it very late and we harvested it kind of early. So that's why this is much smaller than what's normally. And so we have bigger decorticators where we're from, but this is just easier for transport. So what we're going to do is just literally just smash it so we can get the herd that's on the inside and break it all up. So you just...
Side note, this is why cotton won out in the 1800s.
Yeah.
They abolished a certain labor force, and as a result, this was much more labor.
And we do have one that like you crank and it will smash it up on the inside. But as you can see, this is what the fiber. Can one of you guys come up here and help me? Come, because like I can't explain it and keep doing this. Yes, perfect. Just you just keep. So, yeah. So that's what you have to do is just continue to smash it constantly. And I'll send this around.
You need one of those cranks to roll on.
And we do have more efficient ones, but it does take a little bit longer to do all of this. So I'll send some of this around. I'm sorry, this is not very efficient. Like, it does take a lot. About hanging it like tobacco before. We do hang it because we do have tobacco houses, and the air does get through because of the slits in the walls. I don't know what else.
So that's really stringy. So you have the inside of it.
Yeah.
And the outside just kind of dries and shuts off. And well, okay.
And so this part can be used for, we use it for horse bedding and other things like that. And because it's dried cellulose, and so in saying that, it's just really absorbent. You can do that. And last year we used the roots for tea, so that was really beneficial.
And that herd that's coming out is what they use for
Yeah. Or hemp.
Yeah. So all the pieces that are coming out is exactly what mixes lime and water to create that hempcrete. And the fiber
So you can hardly hurt that thing inside?
No, it's just that shit. It's just that
Okay.
The fiber?
The fiber, you can't hardly hurt that.
That's what made it strong.
No, they do have things like, there are mechanics that do that. There are machines that actually do this, and you can do it right in the field. But your fiber won't be as fine, and it won't be as good for like spinning and other things, but you can use that more for like paper. You can get all these things from China, Europe. I mean, they have the things. He's doing much better than I am. And then you just take it.
Like a hay bag.
Yeah. Well, that's why they actually do the same kind of process as they do on wood.
Very
and paper. When the thing has a higher federal wood is only about 50%.
Well, and it also, with that being said, on the opposite end of that, what do we call it around here in Iowa? It's weed. It's a weed. They go out there and it dries up. You break it open. Hey, look, I can have some Indian gum.
Yeah.
Guys, help me out. You know, the
What is it
Indian
called?
gum. And
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
right? You know, but
What is it?
so I've never seen an inside like that.
Yep.
We did not harvest the seed off of this. This was actually done with my college. So it was a research plot, and we were talking about how much it takes up from the soil, and that's why we harvested some of the roots as well. But we did not take the seed. We did measure out like the seed count in it and things like that. But no, and also you can't transport that off across state lines because that's illegal and other things. I don't really like doing a lot of paperwork, so I just left all the seed at home.
If you could make a dryer to dry that stuff pretty easy. When I was up at the paper mills, they take that liquid paper and run that, when they make paper, and that all heat there goes in one end as liquid and comes out the other end as paper.
Yeah, okay. Now
I mean, you can.
They could run it across the chain. That is something.
And is there any more other questions?
Does the hemp rope stretch and retract as it gets wet?
Gets wet. I don't really know. Usually it kind of stays the same. I know it's more resistant to water because that's what they use on ships.
That's why it was used on ships, is because
it doesn't.
It's not very flexible. It's very sturdy.
That's why I asked if
So
it dried
I
and
would assume
stretched.
not. Yeah, I don't think it stretches.
Because this is how they water bred some of it, and the fiber becomes finer, but it won't per se shrink or stretch. Yes, it's definitely not elastic. But the hemp rope is very strong, and that's why it was used so often. Kentucky was the hemp capital of the world, so we're pretty happy to get back into hemp. And being one of the pioneers of the hemp and being so young, I feel really blessed to be a part of it, because in 5-10 years it's going to be a major industry. I mean, when people started growing corn commercially, it didn't take off all of a sudden. People grew small amounts for their families and things like that, and that's what they used to do with hemp. They'd grow enough themselves, and then it became a bigger thing, then it became outlawed. And then so, in order to get back to that, it's a slow process, but we're willing to make that.
So, throughout all these years, and now where we are with our knowledge of the hemp plant, who can we blame on opening up all this knowledge? Who are we going to blame on it, you know? Is it just science? I mean, because out of all the plants in the world, and all the different uses for a plant, I mean, so it's just science, right? Is it? I don't know. It's a question. I have no idea. What do you guys think?
Otherwise, who was holding
I'm not
it
sure I
back?
understand.
Well, there's so many uses for this plant. Who gets it credited for?
Oh, kind of as the Eli Whitney of the cotton gin kind of scenario.
Taboo, you know.
Well, I mean, this was being used for these purposes for centuries. You know, before it's only been prohibited for 70 years. That's the only period of time where it wasn't being used in everything. You know.
Provenly, though. I mean, okay, yeah, we can. If that's true, we can use that plant for that. I mean, they just like, hey, well, over there they use this plant for this. Try it, you know.
I assume there are mechanical processes that.
Oh, yeah. There are definitely mechanical processes, but unfortunately those are expensive. Just like those big combines. I don't know if you guys have them, but those big combines up there, those don't cost a few $1,000s. They cost a few $100,000. You would love that. So these machines, they do cost a lot of money, and unfortunately, since we're starting up, getting funding is hard. Trying to get banks to allow us to get loans and other things like that. It's hard because they're all FDA approved.
I'm
or
just saying the
FTC.
technology's out there. You don't have to develop it yourself.
There is technology out there.
Europe has something that's much more highly efficient than a
Oh yeah.
Iowa State grad with a
We've been
Ford.
looking a lot into China. Yeah. And China has a lot of things. Europe, even Canada. But the things are, it's just trying to make it on our own right now, just because we're trying to be more as grassroots as possible. Trying to do it ourselves, I guess.
Well, there's something to be said for thinking outside the box or not looking at the box.
Lifetime had 10 acres. Stop doing that, wouldn't it?
Well, in World War II, you know, the government did this Hemp for Victory Act. And
Yeah, my grandparents grew it.
well, in a year we had, I don't know how, I think 40 processing plants throughout the country, and I don't know the numbers, but there's a lot.
Do that real quick.
It can. So like if we